At it again. And, I just came across the clip where Kamala was, at one of her rallies and, she was like, I wonder, why does Trump's staff want him to hide? Basically kind of begging Trump to get back on the debate stage, which tells you everything you need to know on what the internal polls are telling her. Why would you be begging for another debate if you're winning? It just doesn't make any sense. Right? Just 2 + 2 = 4 in that situation to me. But you guys can let me know your opinion. But also, Trump is doing the exact opposite. As a matter of fact, he did another interview with Bloomberg, I believe in Chicago. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of that. But I want to get into something else as well at the end. So stick around. But first, let's hop into a couple of these clips because it was absolutely fantastic. And, to go on Kamala's point about hiding, this is how the interview started. Let's dive in.
The first is just for the record and for those people watching on television. The Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg both invited Vice President Harris to a similar interview about her economic plans that she has declined so far.
Oh, so who's hiding, Kamala? Is it you or is it Trump? Sounds like you the one hiding, and we know it. We know exactly why. But let's continue.
Let's return to one other big subject that you bring up repeatedly, immigration.
Yeah.
I know it's a very emotive issue for you, but just from the point of view of business people here, you look at the full effect of taking a lot of people out of the workforce, removing a lot of people. The Congressional Budget Office is banking on the fact that there'll be $9 trillion added to the GDP of America over the next 10 years by immigrants. You want to stop that process. For all the people who run businesses in the audience, I'm just focusing on the economic thing, are you prepared to say, look, it's fine to have a slightly smaller economy in exchange for having the immigration controls you want?
Simple answer. I want a lot of people to come into our country, but I want them to come in legally. I don't want to have...
But that means you will have to deport. You are talking about deporting 11 million people.
So you just heard the entire room of business people cheer as Trump made that statement. But then also, one thing that I've been noticing is that a lot of these interviewers seem to be kind of cheering for illegal immigration. I showed you guys the clip of the New York Times interview with J.D. Vance. I drew a blank there for a second. But then also, here where he says, well, that means you're going to have to deport 11 million people. Like, and just because it's a big number doesn't mean that we just throw our hands in the air and just give up. Like, no. Okay, 11 million people. All right, let's get it done. Simple. But let's continue.
Critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope.
Because
the countries
if you have America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports, you're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
No. What's going
that is
to
just
happen?
simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figure it. I was always very good at mathematics.
Yes.
Let me tell you, you're saying $3 trillion.
That's $3 trillion worth of imports.
And they don't have to pay. And by the higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the country.
The higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to have to pay in shops.
Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many, as you know, that will take many years.
In fact, I'll tell you, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. When I do the 10%, 10% is really, first of all, 10% when you collect it is hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers that you're talking, all reducing our deficit. But really, so there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Now, if you want the companies to come in, the tariff has to be a lot higher than 10%, because 10% is not enough. Guys, they're not going to do it for 10. But you make a 50% tariff, they're going to come in. Let me tell you the other thing about tariffs that's great. Our steel companies, as you know, 3-4 years ago, they were all going. When I was in office, I saw a man from a big steel company, and he was devastated. I knew him for a long time, and it's been a tough business. It was a great business many years ago, and I would not let U.S. steel be sold to Japanese, by the way. It's psychologically, I think it would be
That's the Nippon steel, as you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it be sold. But I would stop it if it hasn't been completed by the time I'm president, because I think it sets a horrible tone. But I had a lot to do with steel. We were going to lose all our steel companies because China, as you remember, was dumping steel at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And I put a 50% tax on that and a tariff on that, all dumped steel. And it was also bad steel. It was what they call dirty steel. It wasn't good steel, which is a bad thing for structural components of buildings and planes and things like that. They were dumping crap into our country. And I put a 50% tariff. I started at 25, I raised it to 50 because the 25 didn't quite do it. I raised it to 50 and that did it. They stopped dumping steel. And I saved our steel mills by having that. We saved it. We saved our steel. Now, what was left, because we've lost so much, but there are certain companies you have to have. There are certain things you have to have. Steel, you have to have. If you go to war, you know, there's a possibility you go to war.
Yeah, absolutely. Tariffs can be used in multiple different ways, and you heard him explain it there. One of the big ways is, hey, forcing these companies to start bringing their companies back here to American soil and not just using cheap labor in some other country and then shipping their goods here to sell for massive profits, right? No, bring those companies back here on American soil and Americans will work those jobs. Then you can sell those products here. Otherwise, there's going to be a 50, maybe even more % tariff on your product and no American is going to buy it. It's just that simple. But I also want to play this little short clip as well for you guys, because Trump is really fighting for the American worker. Check it out.
We're going to put tariffs on them, and they're going to do, and you know what they can do? The Mercedes-Benz will start building in the United States, and they have a little bit, but you know what they really are? Assembly, like in South Carolina. But they build everything in Germany, and then they assemble it here. They get away with murder because they say, oh, yes, we're building cars. They don't build cars. They take them out of a box and they assemble them. We could have our child do it.
Yeah, so you see them like playing this little weird game of, it's American built. No, it isn't. You shipped it in parts and pieces here in a box, and people just added some nuts and bolts together, and boom, done. No, that's not American built. No, from start to finish, you create the product here in America. And I just want to play this clip for you guys, because this is exactly what Trump is trying to prevent with some of these tariff proposals. Check it out.
I own my own home, a couple cars, you know what I mean? I got 4 kids, got a wife, beautiful wife at home. So to see it just all of a sudden disappear, wouldn't you be a little mad about that?
The Detroit auto worker is dying on the vine.
And I've been here 4 years working hard. You want to give these jobs to other people so you can pay them less than what you're paying me. You shouldn't have never did that.
You can hear her in the streets. You can hear him in the bars. This is a UAW joint in Warren, Michigan. Stellantis, the European company that now owns Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and Chrysler, is laying off 2,500 people at the factory right across the street. Whenever I go to a wake...
Yeah, so you heard that there. That is exactly what Trump is trying to prevent. The laying off of individuals and taking those jobs and sending them somewhere else for cheaper labor. That's exactly what, and not only with the tariffs, but also with the illegal immigration. Getting the illegals out of here so they can't undercut the American worker. I also want to play this other clip for those that may be confused as far as, tariffs and that whole situation. Here's an explanation of tariffs, and it's actually perfectly put. Check it out.
When you talk to the former president about tariffs, do you see it as a bargaining chip, or do you think you're going to see tariffs across the board of 20%?
I think we should put tariffs on stuff we make and not put tariffs on stuff we don't make. It's pretty simple. And of course it's a bargaining chip. We can't sell a Ford or GM in Europe. You go to Europe, you can't sell a Ford or GM. Why? There's 100% tariffs. How about in Japan? 100% tariffs. So do you think if we said, we're going to tariff you the way you tariff us, do you think they're going to allow Mercedes and all these Japanese companies and Porsches and BMWs to all of a sudden have 100% tariffs in America? Of course not. They're going to come and negotiate, and their tariffs are going to come down. And finally, Ford and General Motors are going to be able to sell in these places.
How's that sound, Andrew? That sounds.
Of course they're going to come down. Of course. This is just negotiating.
It absolutely makes sense. If you do it strategically, if it's across the board, it creates a real problem. And the question is whether you believe the president is going to do it strategically or across the board. He keeps saying it across the board.
Well, when you're running for office, you make broad statements so people understand you.
Right.
Okay? Tariffs are an amazing tool by the president to use. They're an amazing tool, but he understands don't tariff stuff we don't make. Right? If we don't make it, and you want to buy it, I don't want to put the price up there. It's pointless. But use tariffs to build in America. If we want to make it in America, tariff it. Or if we're competing with it, tariff it. But you got to remember, we need to protect the American worker. Finally, someone's going to protect the American worker. And Donald Trump is here to protect the American worker.
Do you think we make a lot of money in tariffs? Or if they're used as negotiating tactics, look, tariffs will come down there. We're not going to have super high tariffs here either. There's not going to be a big pot of money at the end of the day.
I love that story. So which is it? Do we make a lot of money on tariffs, or we bring productivity here and we drive up our workers here? So it's a win-win scenario. I like both of them. I think what's going to happen is we'll make a bunch of money on the tariffs, but mostly everybody else is going to negotiate with us, and we will be more fair. In 1948, right, we came up with something called the Marshall Plan, right? The world, Germany and Japan were destroyed after World War II, and we wanted to export our economy to them. So we made a rule. They could tariff us, and we won't tariff them. So they can rebuild. This is the
best explanation I've heard of.
So they can rebuild their economy. We rebuilt their economy using something called the Marshall Plan. Yeah. Our economy is so awesome that we'll use it to help you rebuild. When should that have ended? What do you think, 1980? Right? 1985? I mean, why 40 years are Japan and Germany and all of Europe still tariffing the heck out of our auto industry, tariffing the heck out of our furniture industry? Do you realize all your furniture you're buying that's made foreign? It seems crazy. Why? It's because they tariff us and we don't tariff them. It's so obvious.
Well put. Well put. These tariffs will bring other countries or companies and sometimes other countries back to the negotiating table, right? And instead of only foreign cars being sold in America and not many American cars being sold on foreign soil, right? Now you'll get more of an even exchange, which obviously will help the American worker, like some of the workers that you just saw laid off there. It won't just be cars only sold in America. You will be able to sell them in other countries, which would obviously help to increase production, which if you got to increase production, you're not going to be laying off 2,500 workers like you just saw there in the clip earlier that I showed you. So those folks who rely on those jobs to pay their bills, to put food on the table, to keep a roof over their family's head, they don't have to worry about, being laid off or the job even leaving to go get cheaper, labor, because they'll know Trump is in office. And after Trump, another Republican, Byron Donalds, Larry Elder, J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy will do the exact same thing. Like, no, you're not leaving to get cheaper labor to take advantage of the American people. I'm going to put a massive tariff on it. So good luck with that one. You're not going to sell it here, right? But obviously the stuff that we don't personally make, right? You're not going to put a tariff on that stuff. Like, it's just obvious. It's common sense. Like, it baffles me sometimes when I watch some of this stuff. And I'm no professional, right? You guys know I've been talking about politics for maybe 2 years. I'm still an infant when it comes to this stuff. But for me, it's just common sense. But when I watch some of these folks, like the guy, which his eye looked crazy. I don't know if y'all caught that. Yeah, this guy. Does his eye always look like this? Y'all see that? What is going on there? What is happening? I don't know. That looks a little weird to me. But when he's talking about, well, Trump is like a blanket tariff. Like, he's just going to tariff everything. Like, what? That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense. Like, what? Like, Trump is a businessman. I ain't saying Trump is like the smartest guy on the planet who's ever walked this earth. No, of course he isn't, right? But he has enough common sense to know you can't tariff everything. Everybody knows that. Everybody, like, it's just common sense. So why even ask a silly question like that? Like, that, duh, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But, yeah, man. I think Trump has a terrific plan to help the American workers. So we stop getting the short end of the stick, as we have been for a long time now. Our politicians, mainly Democrats and rhinos, of course, have been selling us out. We'll help everybody else, but when Americans need help, F you. Figure it out. Right? I mean, $750, even though your house just floated down this river that was just created. $750. Oh, for you? Only half your house floated down the river, so you get declined. What? $750 for the people of Maui? Goodness gracious, man. Goodness gracious. Oh, your job is leaving to go to Mexico? Oh, well, find a new job then, I guess. Find a new job. Oh, it's going over to China somewhere so they can have cheaper labor? It's all right. Just find a new job, Trump is like, nah, F that. Bring all their butts back here to American soil or else. And I love it. I love it. I agree with it 1,000%. But what do you say? Let me know. Stay safe out there. Peace and love. I'm out.